Can you believe it? It's been almost 2 months since I've converted this IKEA Socker Greenhouse into a terrarium. There's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and in today's video, I'm going to be covering every single one of those points. What is up, guys? My name is Lithius and welcome to Roots Ready. So one of the first things I want to point your attention to is the fact that although I have some weather stripping that is falling off and needs replacing, this greenhouse has actually been very, very good at maintaining a good humidity level. Especially now that the sun is coming out and it's a little bit warmer, you can see all of the condensation on here, which is a really good sign, which shows that this terrarium is really holding on to that moisture, and that's something that should help the plants to grow and thrive. What's interesting though is that in the mornings, like it is now, the humidity in this thing gets really, really high, and you can see that water on here, but throughout the day it starts to drop a little bit and it gets a little bit clearer. Within the first week or so of transitioning this greenhouse into a terrarium, I actually noticed that there was some mold, some fungus growing on the substrate, and that was a little bit worrying. I was like, could this spread and potentially really cause some serious damage to these plants? But luckily it didn't. I went in with some fungicidal spray, and I just lightly sprayed the substrate, the plants as well. And since then, I haven't had any issues of fungus in this terrarium. So that was one of the first panic moments that I had. I also noticed that although I went ahead and gave it this terrarium a really good spray, making sure that the substrate was really well watered, that some of the plants were not looking great. Some of them started to sort of wilt. So within, I think it was under a week, I actually went back and I gave it a really good watering, especially if you remember, most of these plants are actually in their own pots. Especially in the pots, I went and I really, really soaked it in, got them nice and wet. And I also went ahead and lightly misted the substrate. And that seems to have done the trick, because now you can see that the plants are in fact growing. I don't want to jump the gun because I want to take you inside of this greenhouse and really show you what's going on. Now, probably the biggest change is I've included an additional plant. This is in fact an orchid that I had, and it wasn't doing too well. So I actually propagated it and I've stuck it in here. The moss probably needs a little bit of watering, but I sort of placed this in here kind of as a rehab project. But then since it's been in here, it actually looks quite good. So eventually what I might do is go ahead and actually make this a permanent fixture in this terrarium. But for now, we'll remove this just so you can kind of see and compare this greenhouse to what it was like when we first started. The first thing you will notice is that this plant over here has completely boomed in growth. I didn't really realize how much this thing has grown since I put it in here until I compared it with the original video. It's done a lot of growing. It's really started to spread, and it's got lots and lots of roots, and it's just taken hold. So that's a really, really good sign. If I take you over to this alocasia, you will see that this was quite bushy when I put it in here. But what happened was that it lost quite a number of its leaves, and that's one of them just here. Well, there's about 2 here, which is really unfortunate. However, one of the baby leaves that was coming out, like this one over here, that's actually still looking pretty good. So that's a really good sign. This one has a bit of a dry tip, but nothing more has happened. But also we have a new leaf emerging just here. So that's showing signs of bouncing back. Over here, this syngonium, oh, this thing, I'm really impressed with this plant because we have a brand new leaf on this syngonium aurea, and it just looks really phenomenal. Really, really great stuff here. So that's really exciting to see it coming through. And even on this stem that I thought would never do anything, there's actually a little growth point which is activated and it's now starting to push through. So it seems to really be enjoying life over here. This plant, however, I don't think it's done much in the way of growing. It's all just maintained its growth, which is, pretty good sign that it's not dying. It sort of stayed where it is, which is really good. However, it hasn't really grown that much in that time. I've included a little begonia cutting, a little leaf here, but I don't think that's going to take, unfortunately. Coming to the other corner of the greenhouse, if I move these plants out of the way, This one over here, this is just looking really, really great. I find this plant to be a relatively slow grower. It hasn't grown a lot. However, it is looking really, really good, really healthy. It's really enjoying this high humidity environment. So that's really, really positive. On the string of hearts that was sort of scattered at the forefront of this grow tent, it is doing really, really well. Most of them have started to root in and actually started to grow. There are a lot of new growth points on this string of hearts, so that's a really positive sign. Coming to this orchid over here, the sort of the main event of this scape, it hasn't really done much, if I'm being honest. It sort of just stayed the course. It hasn't lost any leaves. It hasn't put out any new leaves. This is a relatively slow growing orchid in my experience anyway. And it's just sort of, yeah, it hasn't really done much. So we'll just keep an eye on this one and see how it does. It's only been 2 months, but we will see. The last thing I wanted to touch on was the fact that we had some moss. I tried to put in some live sphagnum moss in the scape as well, just to add a bit of color, a bit of pop of something, and some alocasia corms as well, if I remember correctly. And unfortunately, nothing much has happened with those ones. So that was a very quick update on this greenhouse. I will try to come back every couple of months, maybe every month or two, just to give you an update on this, especially if I have to do any major trimming. Especially with this plant over here, I can tell that this is going to be a bit of a beast in this terrarium. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on it. But I really want to see how the string of hearts develop and really carpet this front area of this greenhouse. So I think it's safe to say that this has been successful so far. Everything has sort of started to grow in. I think the next step for them now is to really start to sort of explode and multiply and so on. So I think there's going to be I think this is going to be quite an interesting one to keep an eye on. Definitely have been more positives than negatives. We have lost some leaves on the alocasia back there. We haven't had any of the corms from the dragon scale actually take hold. The black velvet is just this one plant. We've lost a couple of leaves, but that's doing okay. But everything else seems to be doing okay. Steady growth. And then we have this one over here, which is completely outshining the rest of the team with its growth. So looking really, really positive for now. If you have any questions on this, do let me know. I know there are probably some ways to sort of improve this, but you know, we're gonna learn as we grow together. But that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.